Right.
On him. We'll come back to him.
I think the lawyer Keyamo is speaking within the context of his understanding. The most important thing that usually happens is a combination effect. So the point on having reserves to be able to cushion the effect is there. But the most important thing is policy direction. When your policy direction in a time of recession contradicts the incentives necessary for you to have the supply side on exchange rate, on a foreign currency for your confidence boosting signal to the market, you're going to run into problem. It's not surprising. He's using an example of Venezuela. Venezuela is the worst example to use in comparing what happened with us, because Venezuela is a classic case of failed economic policy that drove it down the lowest rung. I think that...
what country would we use? I mean, in comparison of, that you say would compare favorably with Nigeria?
You had, even if you talked about countries in Africa, you had Algeria. You also would talk about even what Angola tried to do. When you look at what other countries like Russia and the rest of them tried to do, it was basically to keep a consistency in the signal that they were sending to the market. I think one of the other things that Mr. Keyamo has not taken into consideration is that when you know that you are in the region of possible recession, you understand what timely decision-making is all about. Economics is about confidence, market confidence, investor confidence, consumer confidence. That's what we use. And it is based on the kind of actions that a government is taking. This was a country where the government knew it was in a parlous state. It was taking over an economy in that state. And it felt that it could just relax until the problem showed up. That was a singular wrong move on the part of this administration.
You said something about consistency of policy. You're saying policy wasn't consistent? I mean, we've had let me just use a simple one here. Interest rates have remained constant for all this while. That's not an indication that could have helped in any way?
No, you see, all of those price variables are interconnected, but some of the things that drive them are dependent on how you're looking at your monetary policy against your fiscal policies. And what had happened was that when the recession was beginning to look like it was going to come on us, the policy direction of the administration was totally confusing to the world. Boardrooms around the world have options. They are not looking to Nigeria as though Nigeria were the only game in town. And so if boardrooms were looking at Nigeria and our economic policy lacked clarity, and our economic policy was also a detour from that period that you spoke about, in the previous time when we had the oil price shock, and it was also really a financial crisis period. When we had that situation, because the central bank and the fiscal side managed things in a way that said no cause for alarm, the boardrooms took a cue from it.
Okay. Your second part of the response to Dr.
really. May I just quickly say that we are still going around circles, because Madam Obi has not mentioned these policies we are talking about. See, we must be very clear as to where we are talking about here. You see, because you say wrong policies, we need to talk about them here.
Okay.
Because, no, let me finish, because, and I want us to cut out this issue of your limited knowledge or not limited knowledge. We should talk about figures. We are here to talk about facts and figures, not limited or not limited knowledge. Because those are emotional statements. We're talking about facts. Now, those countries, Madam Obi mentioned, were able to also resist the shock because they also have diversified before.
So let me ask you this. What do we make of just a moment. What do we make of the fact that the president did not appoint ministers for 6 months? more than 6 months. What do we make of the fact that one of the biggest criticism against the government when it came into office, you remember then that, you know, exchange rate was, you know, it was haywire. People were changing the dollar for 500 naira to the dollar, if not more, at some point immediately after this government was sworn in, and shortly after.
Can I mention those two sort of before we model up things?
Yes,
those two you mentioned.
Those two were critical.
Yes. There was...
and one of the greatest criticism against the government then was that people were not sure of the economic direction of the government.
First of all, the ministries function without ministers. That is the truth. Now, when people mention things 1,000 times, it now becomes like some kind of benchmark or some kind of truth you want to, drive down their throats. The point is that I have not seen anywhere in the world, where you say the departments of government do not function with the normal bureaucratic setup. So when people began to mention it then that because ministers were not appointed, that's why we slipped into recession, I have not seen anywhere where there's an economic Bible in the world. Show me, Google it, to say when you don't appoint political heads of bureaucracy, because ministers are political heads.
So you're saying that did not affect us?
It did not. It did not in any way. And I want to correct the impression today.
Nobody said so here.
No, but I know. But
nobody
people,
said so here.
But I mentioned that because that was the whole story out there. But I'm happy you are saying that nobody said that here. But the whole story was everywhere, so I need to correct it here today.
No. Hold us accountable.
I need to. Let me say. You know, the point is that ministers are political heads of bureaucracies.
So what?
The fact that you don't appoint political heads of bureaucracies does not mean that the bureaucracies don't function.
Then
it doesn't mean so, because you have to argue with reference to economic theories.
Barrister Keyamo, some of us are not used to this, dilly-dallying about issues. As far as I'm concerned, I am not here to represent or to de-represent any political thinking. I'm here to present facts as I know them, to listen and perhaps in the process learn. As far as I'm concerned, in a democracy, a government that has won election is duty-bound to appoint the key appointments of state. You have to appoint the Chancellor of the Exchequer or Minister of Finance. Ministers will be responsible for security, the economy, and so on and so forth. When you take a deliberate political decision to refuse to make these appointments because you believe politics was going to favor you, or you stood to gain something by monopolizing policy making in the way that was done in 2015, clearly you're opening the way for disaster, and that's what we got. Okay. By definition, hold on. By definition.
We need to go to break. Pardon me, but we'll be back and get more response on this matter in just a moment. Don't go away.